Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's Kate Cornick, and I'm the CEO of LaunchVic. Thank you very much for joining us here today to talk about our Women's Pre-Accelerator Grants Program. I'd like to begin, as we always do at LaunchVic, by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet. For me, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I'd like to also acknowledge our phenomenal Indigenous entrepreneurs across the state of Victoria. Welcome to everyone who has registered for this session today. We're here to provide more information about our grant round. I'd like to begin by saying that this grant round is for programs. We have had the most phenomenal response to this information session and have many people joining us. I can see there are 55 participants already. I have to say, if you're a startup, this is not the right show for you. So we're looking to fund pre-accelerator programs that are going to help startups. So we certainly hope that what we fund out of this program will be a support for startups. But we did notice we had quite a lot of startup participants joining the call today. So I would definitely recommend, and we will not be offended if you jump off and go back to growing your startup. That is the right thing to be doing. If you're interested in running a program, then you are definitely in the right room. Please stay on, and hopefully you'll find this session really, really useful. I know my colleagues Bronwyn and Josh are online, and they are monitoring the Q&A channel. So I also have it open here, and will do my best to answer questions as we go along. So please do put any questions into the Q&A channel. I will not be monitoring the chat channel. I'm not particularly good at multitasking, so please use the chat channel for any questions. If I don't get to them along the way, I will make sure that I get to them at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the session. So first of all, we have just released our latest data. It came out only a couple of weeks ago, and it was based on our 2022 ecosystem mapping. We very proudly have found that our number of women startups with a women co-founder has increased from 20% to 34%. We're proud of that statistic because that's happened over 2 years, and a big part of that has been our women's pre-accelerators. We're not satisfied with it because, quite frankly, until it's 50-50, we really haven't done our job properly, and that's a big part of why we're here today seeking more pre-accelerators to help bring more women-led startups to the Victorian startup community. What I would also say is that while 34% of startups have a female co-founder, we also recognize that women are still very underrepresented in that. And what we have seen a trend for is all male teams moving to male teams plus a female. So on average, a typical startup in Victoria looks like 2 men plus 1 woman co-founder. And that's great, but we also know that there are some fantastic all-women teams, and there are also some fantastic all-male teams. We know that our all-female teams actually have a lot more disadvantage about coming to market. So it's not only about just supporting women co-founders, it's also about supporting all women businesses, and that is definitely a challenge in the sector. So while we have seen an increase in women co-founders from 20% to 34%, we also realize there's a hell of a lot more work to do, and at LaunchVic we're ready to do that work. So one of the key mechanisms that we use to grow the startup community is our pre-accelerator programs. And the reason that we want to support pre-accelerator programs is that they support founders who are really in that ideation phase, thinking about whether they want to start a startup or have just started a startup, to get the right networks, connections, support, and advice to help them on their journey. So we are seeking to provide funding for women-focused pre-accelerator programs, and they ultimately will have 3 goals, which I will get to on the next slide. Oh, not on the next slide, I apologize. The first thing I'll get to is the definition of a startup. So at LaunchVic, we define a startup by a business with global potential that uses innovation and addresses scalable markets. So they're typically disruptive. Small businesses and startups, particularly at pre-accelerator level, can be a bit of a blurred boundary, but we are definitely looking for startups. So they're typically businesses that are using deep technologies or software as a service to address these global problems and global markets. The example I always use is accounting. So MYOB and Xero are two really big unicorns in the accounting space that were definitely once startups. Your high street accountant that's starting out may be a great small business that's starting, but they're not a startup. So they're defined and limited by the number of consultants that they have and often constrained to a geographic area. We do recognize at LaunchVic that startups are a really important part of the business community, as are small businesses. And LaunchVic is here to service the startup portion of the community, and Small Business Victoria exists to service the small business portion of the Victoria community. So we are looking for programs that are going to help startups. So necessarily, we want people in those programs with startup expertise, and I'll come to that in a moment. So back to what do we want to get from the Pre-Accelerator programs? Well, ultimately, we want to support more women-led startups and entrepreneurs by helping them bring their technology-focused startup to life and create a minimal viable product. We want to increase the pipeline of women-led startups being created across Victoria, because as much as we look at that figure of 34% across the entire ecosystem, it is a pipeline problem, and we need to get as many female-led companies into the early stage of the funnel so that in many years' time, probably around a decade, we have gender equity in the late stage part of the funnel. But we do recognize that this is a timing issue. But if we want to solve for female engagement across the sector, across all parts of the startup community, from startup to scale up, we have to increase the pipeline of women-led companies. And then we also want to increase the pipeline of companies going into accelerator programs. So they're the ones that are going to help, accelerators, the programs that are going to help startups scale and grow. So this project will allow this funding that's available will allow people who are interested in a program running a pre-accelerator program for startups, for women-led entrepreneurs, to access funding to help them do that. And hopefully together we can continue to see the increase in number of women. I note that we've got a question about how many women are there in terms of numbers. There are about 3,000 startups, so about a third of those have a women co-founder. So we see that a third of all startups have a women co-founder, but if we look at the number of women-led startups, it's much lower. Onto the next slide, the grant program summary. As I've said, the program must support women-led women-led entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs, but they must be Victorian. LaunchVic's funded by the Victorian government, so we are looking to support Victorian women. That's because we are spending Victorian taxpayers' money that need to flow back into this state. Funding's available up to $300,000 to run for a minimum of 2 years. And what we are requiring is that you must have proven experience. The applicant must have proven experience in supporting early stage startups, experience in supporting women-led startups to grow, as well as more broadly the startup community. So if you're a founder, as I said before, we do have a lot of people on the call today. If you're a founder looking for money, this is not the show for you. Please, we will not be offended if you log off and go back to growing your startup. This is a program for people who are looking to run pre-accelerator programs to help women entrepreneurs grow their startup. So, and we are looking for people with proven expertise. So if you are very passionate about women's engagement in the community, but don't have any startup experience, again, I don't recommend you respond. We're really looking for people who've got deep experience in supporting early stage startups, especially women-led startups. So the final thing I'll say is that we are accepting applications from both new and existing programs. So we can certainly are very happy to potentially refund programs we've already supported, as well as new programs, and the funds can be used for operating costs. So the eligibility, we do have a suite of eligibility, and obviously the most important eligibility is the program focus. So we're looking for pre-accelerators for women startups. And I know I keep banging on about this, but it's amazing how many people will not put in an application for women entrepreneurs. We're not looking for broader sectoral areas or particular other cohorts of people that have we recognize might not have the representation. For example, regional, we have different programs for that. We have supported different programs for regional entrepreneurs. We're specifically looking for programs that will support Victorian women startup entrepreneurs. And we're not looking to fund startups directly. So just to reiterate, if you're a startup looking for funding, this is not the show for you, and we won't be offended if you log off. We want you to have a delivery team that's got proven experience in supporting early stage startups to launch and grow. So what we're looking for there is exemplified experience in delivering pre-accelerator programs or other equivalent programs. So you might have worked in an accelerator somewhere else and you're looking to do something specifically for women. You might have worked in similar comparable programs, but they must be helping startups. And so it is that key person and the experience of the team that applies is a really important criteria. So if you don't have that experience, you won't be eligible. The type of organization that can apply include people that are registered in Victoria or and headquartered or have a registered office in Victoria. They might also be located outside of Victoria, but propose to set up a program or deliver a program in Victoria. We are making sure that the program has representation on the ground. We don't like virtual programs that don't have local representation. We know that it is so important to have community, to have people that are Victorian entrepreneurs can go and meet and greet at events across the community. So we are definitely looking for people who have got that. Grants, as I said before, up to $300,000 for a minimum of 2 years, and applications must be submitted by our Smarty Grants on the deadline. I'll come to that at the end of this call. It's amazing how many people come to us after the deadline and say, please, please let me in. And it's not fair on everybody else who has managed to meet the deadline. So we do have a really hard and fast deadline, and I'll come to that at the end. I know there's a number of questions open and I'm going to get to them, but I think some of them will be answered as I go through the key selection criteria, which is coming up next. So I'll go through that and then I'll have a look at the questions. So key assessment criteria, the first thing that we're asking for is a description of the overview of the pre-accelerator. So in particular, we want to have an understanding of the details. How is your program delivered? Is it what sort of contents used? What sort of mentors are used? What's the number and length of cohort that you do? And also the target audience. So we definitely want women entrepreneurs, but you might also have a sector focus. So you might be developing a pre-accelerator for women in biotech. Very interested in receiving those sorts of things. But if you are doing a sector specialization, we want to understand how you're going to get to your pipeline. We want to understand why LaunchVic funding is required. Maybe you've already got funding, maybe you don't need it. We need to make sure that LaunchVic's funding is used in the best possible way. And we want a basic timeline of delivery. So those three aspects cover the overview. We also want to understand the program delivery. So where will it be delivered? What partners will be used to deliver the program? Have you got other people? For example, are you partnering with a local council or another accelerator program to deliver the program? And we also want to have an understanding of community building initiatives that will be undertaken. So we see pre-accelerators not just being really important in delivering the content to help women entrepreneurs, but they play an important role in building a community more broadly across the ecosystem. So we do want our partners to really be very active in the community. We do want, and as I said before, to have representation in Victoria. That's really important to us. But we also recognize that some aspects of your program might be online. We want to know the outcomes. So we definitely want to know how many startup entrepreneurs will be supported in each cohort and any other outcomes that you might be willing to achieve. As I mentioned before, experience and expertise is really important. So we want to know the organization that's applying the background relevant experience and how many startup entrepreneurs you've supported. If you're a new organization, we want to know that from your perspective as the lead of the organization. So while you might be setting up a new organization, what's your experience in relevant experience in supporting women entrepreneurs? We want to know all the delivering team. As you know, you might still have people that you need to appoint, but we definitely see merit in seeing strong applications where there's a fully formed team. They definitely go down well. If we don't know who the full team is, you do get marked down for that. But we do recognize that on occasions, teams might come forward without knowing certain roles. And so there might be a TBC, but for everybody who is known and appointed, we want to know their relative experience. And we also want to know, as I said before, how many staff will be in Victoria. We look very kindly on staff that are located in Victoria because of the community aspect of that. We also want to see your experience. So we would like you to give us 3 startup entrepreneurs you've helped launch a company. So we don't want a huge amount of detail. We just want the company name, the website, a brief summary of your support and the growth that was achieved as a result of that support. From a finance perspective, we want to know your cash and in-kind contributions, as well as cash and in-kind contributions by any partner organizations you might be working with, and letters of support from partners are really very highly viewed. We also want to know a budget. Now, the budget is the line, if you've heard me speak at these sort of things before, it's the one that I always pick on. It is astounding how many people cannot budget. And if you are running a program to help people run a business and you don't know how to budget, it does leave a big question mark in our head. So please make sure you spend the time on the grant to go through the budget and deliver a budget that actually adds up. Our system in Smarty Grants is automated. At the bottom, you can see what your income is, what your expenditure is. And if the income doesn't match the expenditure, we have a problem. And it is amazing how many applications come through where we see a massive underspend or even worse, overspend. And that does raise questions for us. We finally, 2 last things. We want to know the diversity inclusion. It is very important to us. And while this grant round is focused on gender, we do have a strong interest in diversity and inclusion more broadly. We want to understand if you are operating, how you are operating in diversity and in a diverse and inclusive way. But we also are very interested in intersectionality and supporting founders, women founders that have other diverse and inclusive opportunities. So, for example, women in regions or in Indigenous women, etc. So we're definitely very interested in that. It's not a diversity and inclusion more broadly as a requirement, and we are focused on women, but we do have a keen interest in intersectionality. And finally, we want to know how you're going to recruit. So we want to have a really clear idea from you about how you are going to get bums on seats in your program. We have a lot of programs that come to us that say, give us money, we're fantastic, we can do the job. But if they don't have a clear pathway and a clear network to build their recruitment, we know that they're less likely to succeed. So we really want to see very clear ways, communication channels, what databases do you already have, what partners and programs are you going to leverage to build that pipeline. So grant round timing, we opened on the 1st of March, and congratulations, you made it to the information session today. The round closes on the 20th of April at 10 a.m. As I say, we are really very tough at LaunchVic about people meeting that deadline. We will let unsuccessful and as well as shortlisted applications moving to the 2nd stage of assessment know by early May. And we're expecting a virtual pitch day. These do occasionally shift, but at the moment, the date is Monday, the 29th of May. And so that will be an opportunity for the shortlisted applicants to come in and pitch to the assessment panel for the program. We expect to contract in June, with a view that announcements happen pretty much in the middle of the year, and it will follow once all the contracts are executed. So I can see that there are a number of questions coming through. Please do send them through. I'm actually going to ignore the ones on the screen, and I'm going to jump into the ones in the chat channel now and just make sure that I have answered your questions effectively. So we've got a question from Juan. Thank you, Juan. The question is, what would be considered as a minimal viable product? Is it a proof of concept, prototype, or testing with users? And actually, we see that does vary. So if you are a biotech company, an MVP might not be testing with users. In fact, very rarely it would be. It would have to go through various layers of regulatory approval. So we definitely see that as being much more as an ideation concept rather than a proof of concept. Equally, if you're a software as a service, it might well be a proof of concept or even testing with users if you are, depending on how well advanced you are. So it is something that we want to understand from the pre-accelerator where you're targeting, and that will determine what we sort of mean by an MVP. So we do have flexibility around that, but we certainly want to see something tangible coming out. It's not just an ideation. We do want to see that there is some real progress towards building a viable company. So hopefully that answered your question. We also have a question about sorry, I'm just reading this one. Is this open to tech startups or all startups? So as I said at the beginning, we define a startup as a business that's using innovation, it's disruptive, and it's global. So by those definitions, they have to be tech generally. So there is, whether it's software or some sort of IP, there needs to be something innovative. Your corner street, high street store selling a product is not a tech company, and it's not eligible for this. So we are very strict on the way that we think about startups versus small businesses. I did present a slide on that earlier, and we definitely encourage you to check out LaunchVic's website if you're unsure about whether things classify as a startup or scale up, a startup or a small business. And yeah, we're definitely looking at the tech side, and we are not really interested in supporting non-tech companies. That's what Small Business Victoria does. Total pool of funding depends on the number of quality applications. We certainly won't be funding 10 programs, but we hope to fund more than one program. But ultimately, we have flexibility depending on the quality that comes in. And for us at LaunchVic, it's more important that we're really supporting super high quality programs that are going to produce super high quality startups, rather than sitting here and saying we have X many dollars to fund X many programs. Somewhere in the order to 2 to 3 is about normal for us these days. But as I say, if we get really high quality, then we do have some flexibility. So we have a clarification about will the program focus be for people that are not just in regional? No, not at all. It's across Victoria. So you can have a metro program, you could have a regional program. We don't mind. We will pay attention to how we are going to support the most number of women, Victorian women, with our funds. So if you are based in regional Victoria and are interested in doing something, we're certainly looking for scale around the program. And so it's probably not just one region, it might be a broader region, but we certainly have done that with our regional programs already. So very happy to receive programs that are based in Metro Victoria, equally very happy to receive programs that are based in regional Victoria. I would note, though, that we have just completed a regional round rather recently. So if they were in the regions, they'd have to very clearly justify how they don't compete with the programs that are already in place, who, by the way, do have targets around gender equity already. So hopefully I've clarified Rachel's question around regional rural. As I say, we're happy to accept metro programs, we're happy to accept regional programs, we're happy to accept sectoral programs, but the one defining factor is they must support Victorian women entrepreneurs. So we certainly want to make sure that we are supporting and using our money to best effect. So you really need to, if you're targeting a particular area or a particular sector, we need to clearly understand how you are going to create scale in the program and get as many people on the seats. We also do expect through this program generalist pre-accelerators, so people that will be supporting any tech startup and potentially from any location across Victoria. And they will obviously have a much stronger pool of people that they can apply to, technically all women entrepreneurs in Victoria. So I would say if you're targeting just regional or just a sector, you do need to really clearly define for us how you're going to get bums on seats into your program. So Veronica has asked a question: can partners be different applications. Yep, we can certainly see. So this is the question, I think, is if you've got partners, could they also apply to the program separately? And we certainly do see that across programs. Where we definitely take a very negative approach at LaunchVic during assessment is when we see people sort of the same groups applying, but they're trying to game the system. And so they're putting in applications. So company A might put in an application with partners company B and C, and company C will put in an application with companies A and B as partners. And so they're all sort of trying to play the game. And quite frankly, you should be able to rate one quality application, and there should be a really clear lead, and we should not be having to pick between the leads. So we would encourage people that are getting involved in multiple programs, that's completely cool, but be really clear and concise about how they are differentiated. So we definitely do see partners pop up on multiple grants, but what we really don't like to see is multiple people gaming the system and just putting in multiple grants for the hell of it. The other one that we really don't like is when we see the same applicant putting in multiple proposals that are slightly different. If you can't decide which is the best proposal, we think you might be a little bit confused and perhaps may not be the best applicant. So we would say just put in one really quality program that you think is the most needed, invest your time in just writing one application, and then we certainly have a really strong understanding of what your capability and interest is. Margaret's after the question, if two accelerators plan to partner to share resources and extend reach, can each apply for funding, or does it need a single application? So as I say, it really depends on exactly what you're trying to do. I'm not going to say do it, but as I said before, we would really like to know which is the strongest applications. We don't want to see multiple applications coming from effectively the same people or even the same applicant. Just do something that's really strong. And if you put your best foot forward in one application, you've probably got a better chance than trying to game the system. Matched funding. I'm going to just get Josh to come in on that one and type out the answer for that. I have to say, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So Josh, can I ask you to either jump online or type the answer in that one? What I will say is that we look favorably on cash and in-kind contributions from partners. I'll come back to that one in one moment. Usman has asked, would organizations that have been funded in previous rounds for different pre-accelerator be able to apply? The answer is yes, absolutely. So very happy to accept pre-accelerators that have previously applied in a different context. What we will do is look at your experience, and yeah, we would be expecting your application to reflect what you have done for us previously. Is there a particular sector that we're looking at? Not especially. We have particular areas where we do see there's more activity, for example, in health tech, but we would expect that if you were putting in a sectoral approach, you would have very strong sectoral expertise in that area. We would probably not be looking to fund something in agtech because we already have 3 agtech pre-accelerators in market. So that would probably not be one that we would look at right now, because we see that our current accelerators are just doing an awesome job out there, and they're already funded, and we don't want to put too many pre-accelerators in market focused on one area. But we want you to tell us where you think the problems are and where the opportunity lies in the context of your own strengths. Is there any consultation provided to discuss the eligibility? The answer is, and I'll come to this at the very end, you can send questions through on our grants hotline, and we have our frequently asked questions. We do like to treat all applicants the same, so everyone has access to exactly the same information. So we don't do one-on-one and individual consultations, because that would be or could be deemed as coaching. I think our eligibility is pretty straightforward, but if you have got a specific question, please do send it through and we will answer it. We'll answer in writing, and that in writing answer also gets put up on the frequently asked questions page on our website. There's a question, is the expectations that founders go through the accelerator are committed full-time to the startup. Not necessarily. We recognize at pre-accelerators, not accelerator level, pre-accelerators being people that are helping, programs that are helping people ideate rather than scale. We would not necessarily expect everybody to be full-time on their startup. It might indeed be a side hustle, and that is not uncommon, but we would ask you to think about the design of your program and make it clear how you're helping different startup entrepreneurs. For example, particularly with women, we recognize that a lot of women have caring responsibilities, and so programs that run in the evening might not be as founder friendly as programs that are run at different times of the week. Obviously, that's an individual decision for each person, but we definitely recommend you take into account the cohort that you're trying to target and how you will make that your pre-accelerator as friendly as possible. If you're overseas on the pitch day, can you present virtually? Yes, that is not out of the question. We have had virtual pitches previously, and so we can accommodate that if you are shortlisted. We would want to understand why you're overseas. If you have moved overseas and are living overseas for a permanent amount of time, that would raise some questions for us. If you are someone who's got some important business overseas and you're over there momentarily, unfortunately not at the time of our pitch session, that's totally cool. We recognize that happens and we can facilitate that. Are we open to high school programs? Thank you for this question, whoever asked that, and I should have made this clear. The answer is no. We are only working with people over the age of 18 years old, and the reason being is that that is how we are at LaunchVic focused, because we ultimately, our goal is to bring companies to market, and so it is much more acceptable and easier to bring a company to market if you're not at high school. We do recognize that as a really significant issue, and there are opportunities to do some phenomenal work with high schools, but this, and indeed primary schools, but this is not the program for that. It is something that we're interested in at LaunchVic, and we're giving a lot of thought to how we could do this potentially in the future, but no, please don't apply if it's a high school program. I've already answered a question about the total pool of funding. It ultimately depends on quality. We probably expect to fund 2 to 3 applicants, but we can certainly fund more if there is a lot of quality. I have got a question about whether we'd focus a female-focused female tech. It is a pre-accelerator that we're looking for. So this is very much around KPIs that are bringing new accelerators to market. However, Marissa, if you've got a really interesting female accelerator, please do reach out to us. We're always interested to know what ideas people have got to accelerate growth companies. And so that would be a different funding pool, and we may well have announcements coming out. Nothing planned at the moment, but perhaps it's something that you could reach out to us separately on. But no, this is definitely a pre-accelerator program, and it's looking to increase the current talent or increase the amount of female founders that are currently in the market. So if they're currently in the market, they're already there, we're already counting them, hopefully. We're really looking about bringing new support for new female entrepreneurs. Can childcare be added part of the budget? There's no reason they can't, but you have to make the budget work. We definitely have a strong focus on education and quality, so budgets are up to you to play with. We wouldn't be providing a childcare program that has no startup content, but if you can demonstrate how it works, we're happy to look at that. Is a existing uni-based pre-accelerator limited to student, staff and alumni able to apply? Yes, absolutely. We have proudly funded the University of Melbourne's Velocity program previously, which is open to staff, alumni and students. And we see that they're, one of the things that Velocity did was give us a very clear understanding of their total pool of potential applicants, and demonstrated that that was a sizable cohort to us. So very happy to receive that. Final question so far is, how many women do we expect to see going through each pre-accelerator? Very good question, and it does vary by accelerator. It's certainly, we would definitely expect more than 10 people per cohort, but we wouldn't want to see cohorts of 100 people. So you tell us. If I say it now, you're just going to put in whatever I say. So you figure out and explain to us what is the right number for your program based on the content and the people that are delivering the program. But we would say certainly more than 10 and certainly less than 100. Hopefully I have answered all of the questions. There are a couple more on screen that the team have prepared based on what has happened and some of the previous questions that are coming through. So we did have a question about, can an accelerator apply with a proposal for a pre-accelerator? And established programs can definitely apply if the pre-accelerator program is supporting women. Can this grant help subsidize placements for women in a broader program? And the question for that is we're really looking for new programs. So we're not looking to provide scholarships into existing programs. We really want to provide the funding to people who are committed to supporting women entrepreneurs. So I've discussed how many applications we'll receive, how many applications will be shortlisted. It does depend on quality. Typically, it will be somewhere between 6 to 10, but it depends on the quality that comes in. As I say, we expect to fund a couple of applications, but it may be less, maybe more, it depends on quality. And I've also spoken about a conversation to meet with the LaunchVic team members. As I say, on that one, we ask you to send emails through to grants@launchvic.org, and we will answer in writing and update the frequently asked questions. And that way, everybody gets the same opportunity to see the same information, and we treat all applicants fairly. Phew, I think that is it. I'm more than happy to stay online for a little bit. If anyone else has got more questions, please do pop them in. More than happy to answer those questions as they come through. Otherwise, we will give you some time back in your day, and we very much look forward to receiving your applications. We've just got a question as someone's just joined and they want the information sent to me. It's all up on the LaunchVic website, so we encourage you to go and have a look at that. When can programs start? We will expect the announcement to be mid-year, so we would want the program to start in 2023. So we'll be looking for something to start in the second half of the year, but there is flexibility around that. Thank you for all the people thanking us. We really appreciate that, and we hope you found this useful. So we've got a question about the cash and in-kind contribution from the applicant. It's viewed favorably. That's true. If you've got cash and in-kind, that's great. If cash is a barrier, then clearly you won't be able to demonstrate cash, but you might be able to provide some in-kind, and that would be viewed favorably. If you don't have either, so be it, and we'll assess the application on its merit. The sample LaunchVic grant agreement should be available through our website. I will check with Josh on that, but I understand the link isn't working, so we will take that offline. Thank you very much for letting us know, and make sure that we get the website working. We've got a question about co-program managers. Absolutely, we will accept co-program managers. That's fine. Well, if there are no more questions, we'll say thank you. And as I say, any other questions you might think of, please do shoot them through to grants@launchvic.org, and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you very much for joining, and we look forward to receiving your applications.